Hello, and welcome to Making Known the Unknown, Series 2, Ignorance, the Mother of Devotion. I'm your guest, Tina Tarryk. Excuse me, I'm your host. Maybe sometime I will be your guest. But tonight with me are my regular guests, Sidney Schwartz, middle school teacher and Bible researcher from Hackensack, New Jersey. Welcome, Sidney.
Hi, Tina.
And Reverend Hewitt, founder of Gifts of the Spirit Church and certified medium. Welcome, Carl.
Thank you.
And welcome to all of you out there. As I'm sure it is much too cold to be outside running around doing anything, I'm sure all of you would rather be inside, and in doing so, tune in to this station and let your friends know and have them tune in as well. You might learn something rather interesting tonight. And as usual, we will be live for 1 hour, and the line to call into is 889-1728. Don't be shy. We touch upon things that are a little unusual for most of you. Maybe some of you have heard a little bit about, but maybe not in as great a detail as we will present it to you. The topic for tonight's show is Judge Not, Lest You Be Judged. I'm sure many of you out there have heard this expression, and I'm sure most of you have some sense of what that means. So throughout the show tonight, we are going to be referring back to the notion of judging people with our own thoughts, and we will dive into details of exactly how thoughts really can affect many things, including our own bodies and the things that happen to us. But before we get into that, I was made aware this evening by Reverend Hewitt that there was something that he wanted to clarify to our audience with respect to last week's show. And if you would, Reverend Hewitt, begin with that.
Well, so many people don't know how to understand mediumship. And a medium is and this is why they're called mediums, a medium is one who is in the middle between the world of spirit and the world of the physical. If you go back to the biblical days, they were called prophets, oracles, seers, and in some cases they were called soothsayers, a person that would perhaps be a member of the staff of a king in a kingdom like that, and oftentimes telling the king soothing things. That's why they were called soothsayers. And last week, the entity that was with me here took over my body at a time that I didn't see the tape until Sunday, and I was very upset about that. And because he was very angry, and for anyone to indicate that this was black magic or anything like that, it got this entity very upset, and of course the entity would have the ability to show it through my body. Now, a medium the body can be taken over, and without them knowing it. And I have seen mediums, their bodies being taken over, and the spirit can enjoy wine and water and food and all of that. And whereas the medium is not even aware of what's going on at that time. Sid knows the Bible so well that he knows where that is in the Bible. The average person does not know that. And there are certain religions out there that don't want people to read the Bible, because a person that reads the Bible and is using their own consciousness will understand it. This is why they don't want them to read the Bible. They'll have too many questions if they do. So this entity last week was very upset because there are people of the clergy that is saying that I'm a fraud and that this is black magic, and they're making very negative comments and accusing or saying that this is very negative, and really accusing him of doing the devil's work. And they were very upset, and they were showing it. When I saw the tape Sunday, I was very upset. It was a very bad weekend for me. So we wanted to clear that up.
And I'd like to clarify a little bit further. When Reverend Hewitt said that they took him over, he was used to using that phrase instead of saying that he kind of went into trance. In other words, that this studio, from my understanding, has many spirit people in it who are influencing us to talk, to give us the knowledge and put the words in our mouths to speak to the people. And so when he said that they took him over, that really meant that he went into a light trance. In the Bible, in the 10th chapter of 1 Samuel, the 6th verse reads, "Then the Spirit of the Lord will come upon you mightily, and you shall prophesy with them and be changed into another man." Well, anyone who saw the tape last week saw Reverend Hewitt as another man. He had a very different persona for a while, one who was very aggravated, and one which is not his normal state of being. And so that this is what's meant by this verse that happened in the Bible, and you all witnessed it last week if you saw the show.
Thank you. I too had received some responses from viewers who had seen the show, and most of them did comment on Reverend Hewitt's expressions, for lack of a better word. But it is very helpful to know that, and in knowing that, we can see that it is in fact the case that Reverend Hewitt is not like this on a normal basis. And
Heaven
if
knows.
viewers have watched this show last season and this season, they'll see that that's not in his nature. And I could tell you that I was in shock as well, so that I knew something quite different was going on that hadn't before. But nevertheless, no harm is done. The message and the point got across, however, in a little bit of a more abrasive manner, but it did.
My ministry is a teaching ministry, it's a healing ministry, and God knows that this teacher, Joshua ben Joseph, Jesus himself, he said to me when I finally gave in and accepted the fact that he had been communicating with me, he says, "It stands to reason that you had to do something right. Otherwise, I would not have presented myself to you in picture form as I have." And I broke down and cried for hours after that because I really had difficulty accepting the fact. I just didn't think I was worthy of that. And I finally accepted it, and I wanted to share that with everybody. I don't care where they're coming from. I don't care who they are, black, white, Jew, Gentile, bond, or free. Anyone with an open mind, I want to share it with them.
Thank you. And that is the focus for this show, that we welcome anybody and everybody who are coming from different backgrounds, different ethnic groups, different experiences. Join in. The last thing that we are going to do is exclude you. Open your mind, ask a question, don't hesitate to call in. I think that you'll find tonight's topic and what we're going to be discussing even more pertinent to most of your day-to-day lives. So I think that we will probably touch upon things that to some degree have touched all of you. And with that, one of the pieces that I wanted to begin with was the notion that our thoughts are real things.
Exactly.
Now, I've heard that expression mentioned, and I don't know who would like to start first, but what exactly do you mean by thoughts are things?
Thoughts are things because each person on the planet here, every one of us, I don't care where you live, I don't care where you're coming from, we all operate on a certain frequency, a certain vibration, every one of us. And when you have a thought, you create that on your own vibration, which is different than mine, different than his. And when you don't like your neighbor and you send out a thought in the ether waves, you're creating that on your vibration. And you actually transmit it out into the ether waves, even though you don't say a word. Just think it, you're transmitting it. And it goes out into ether waves. Now, if it's negative, it can only draw negative energy to it. It is known as the law of attraction. It will attract more negative energy to it. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and it grows up. It becomes grown up, becomes a monster after a while. And there comes a time in what we know as evolution. It seeks out its mother, father, creator, which is you. And it comes back and it attaches to you, the light field that is around you, and that light field around you is coming from your soul. It's called the light field around you. Whereas, for instance, he called himself the light of the world. There's a light around everybody. It's called the auric field, the aura. It's a natural thing, lowest frequency of light on the planet. I have what is known as second sight. I see a light around you. I see the light around these people behind the cameras, even though you people don't see them because there's no light back there to show who they are. I see the light. The dimmest light around anybody I see mostly are the clergy because they're so close-minded. They don't like to hear that. I know that. But some of the people where the brightest light are the ones that are very humble. People that I've seen on the street that are, you would call them street people, that would don't have a thing in the world. Very humble people. Their light goes out. This is like a bubble. And you see a person like that a dog would come up to, an animal would come up to, the animal sees the light and they're not afraid of that person. A horse would come up to an animal, a bird, a dove, an owl. You see, they're not afraid of that person. They see the light around them.
So let me get this straight. If I'm upset with my neighbor, I'm angry with them, and I sit in my home and I stew and I talk about them and I talk to other people about them and I get really worked up, all I'm really doing is sending energy out that's going to eventually come back to me and hurt me.
Right.
It'll come back and hurt you. It'll come back and attach itself to the light field around you, and that light field around you pulsates out and in and out and in. And eventually, it's like the waves of the ocean. It pulsates out and in and out and in. And it's something that it's hard to explain, but it's something just like in this room here, we breathe in the oxygen. We have to have it. Well, this is similar to, but not the same thing as the oxygen. And after a while, because this is negative energy that we're breathing in, it causes the body to go at war with each other, the cells of the body, and it creates cancer in the body.
Okay, wait a minute, right there. Sidney, did you want to comment first?
Right. One thing that I wanted to say was going back to the phrase thoughts or things, is that while we use that frequently as terminology, I think it's clearer to say that thoughts are energy. And if you think about light and how fast light travels, 125,000 miles per second, I believe, is the speed of light. And thought
186,000.
Or whatever. and
a little bit faster.
So, but thought energy travels just as fast, and we saw that last week when someone out in the audience had some negative thoughts, and Reverend Hewitt picked up on it instantaneously, because that energy travels fast and travels out into the universe, and as he says, comes back. So I prefer thinking of it as thought as energy, and you know, conversely. You can look at it two ways. We're talking about if you're sitting there thinking bad thoughts. Well, what happens if you turn around and think about good thoughts? Suppose you're trying to do something and make a change in your life. The more you think about it and the more you talk about it, you're projecting that energy out, and that is also going to come back to you eventually to help you make that change. So it works both sides of the scale.
No, what's interesting here first of all, Carl touched upon cancer. Okay, and we're definitely going to get back to that because that's something that I really need to have explained, as I'm sure most of the viewers do out there. I also remind you, we are live, 889-1728. We've got a real hot topic tonight.
One other thing, Tina, if the audience might want to have a pen and pencil and paper with them, because later on we're going to be giving some information that you might wish to write down. So you might get that ready.
Very good. Thank you. You know, what I was going to say is that all our lives we're taught to have good thoughts towards other people, think well of others, pray for others. If they need help, if they're invalid, if they're hurt, just sending good thoughts out. But what we're really doing is sending those out to come back to us, to, if I'm not mistaken, to broaden the light field. But we never look at the opposite. Isn't that funny that we kind of only give ourselves credit for sending positive thoughts out and making an effect or trying to have an effect on people, but we don't really look at what happens if you have negative thoughts, where we assume that it's going to harm people.
Well, this is why Jesus taught, judge not lest ye be judged. He was trying to say, don't think the negative thoughts, because it's only going to come back there to bother you and hurt you.
So now thinking the good thoughts, as Carl had mentioned, will come back and be absorbed into your light field that surrounds your body. Does the light field get bigger as a result? Is it quite that simple?
It took me a long time to learn to bless the people that cut me off going down the highway. You understand? So I would say, bless you, bless you, bless you, because if you send a blessing out to somebody like that, it really does come back to you as a blessing eventually. And I would advise all the viewers to do that. It's not easy to do bless somebody that's really throwing stones at you or cutting you off.
Okay.
Send them a blessing instead of cursing them.
Okay, all right. That's good
Or
practice.
Or blessing your computer, which I forget to do either.
Okay, now we've gotten it to that point. So these thoughts come back into your light field. And you mentioned cancer. How does that affect our biology? Where does it, or why does it go from energy, or does the energy change of form and literally jump into our bodies?
It causes the cells of the body to go at war with each other. The cells start fighting with each other.
So
you ever heard of the cells starting to eat each other?
Yes, I mean, we've spoken of many different diseases, flesh-eating diseases, and I suppose cancer, although I'm not an expert,
stop and think about
does
it.
that.
The cells start eating each other.
Well, that's what happens with Alzheimer's. There's big holes in the brain. That's why the synapses don't work.
Okay, this is very difficult. So if it's that simple, then why are we having people having chemotherapy and all types of other treatment out there when thoughts can change this?
I had a problem in the church one time way back several years ago. It was the first big problem I had in the church. I wanted to go, and I put a request in for the church to pay for my seminar out in Montana or someplace. It was a measly $600, and I had never asked the church to pay for anything before. I would pay my own way on everything, get the knowledge, come back, and share it with the people. This time I asked the church to pay. They had the money. And they gave me a bad time, and I canceled the whole thing. That is, I canceled the church from paying. I paid my own, went out, got the knowledge, came back, and shared it with the church. And it was at that seminar that I found out from a doctor that was there that Alzheimer's disease comes from food cooked in aluminum. And that's what causes it, because as you know, aluminum, if you cook anything with acid in it, such as tomatoes or anything like that, it's very dangerous. So he advised everybody never cook anything with acid in it and get rid of all aluminum cookware. And they had approved that, but the aluminum companies are so big, they fight against that, see. So that's where that came from. If you go way back before they started making aluminum cookware, there was very little of that.
Okay, so Alzheimer's has its root in the way food is cooked and
Right.
And what it's cooked in.
Yeah, aluminum cookware.
So let me just play out this example, because I'm sure many of you out there, as well as my family, has been touched by cancer.
Yeah.
And I'm sure many of you know at least one person, or know of a person who knows a person who's been afflicted with cancer. That seems to be the disease of the century, if you will. Thoughts really manifest into something that eats away the body.
Yes.
So can we change our thoughts and likewise
You
cure
can
ourselves?
change your thoughts. And the other thing, too, there's been many doctors in the other dimension that have had meetings with me, especially when I went into woods hiking, and I would sit, and they would gather with me and lecture me, and they would say the human body was never made to consume any kind of smoke, regardless of whether it was leaves or it was rags or it was any kind of tobacco at all. It was never, ever. And when I was a child, little boy, living in North Carolina, and my family grew tobacco, that's what they grew, sold it at the market for cigarettes. And I'm the only one of the family that never smoked cigarettes. And Spirit would not allow me to smoke. And everybody else was dead. I'm the only one that's still alive.
Really?
And they're all died because of cancer from smoke. And see.
Well, I have a question. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
That's
cancer
all right, I've been on the
is
spot before.
cancer is something that really brings up a lot of emotions for many of us. What about children who have cancer?
It's passed on through the family, through the genes.
So the genes absorb the negative
Yeah.
energy or the anger?
Okay,
or
they explain that to me a lot of times. Many times when, say, the man during copulation, at the last moment, at the very last moment, in the seed, the very last moment, the germ is in the seed, and that is planted in the womb.
Let me step in here.
Okay.
The way it was explained to me is that whatever thoughts are going through the man's
Yes.
mind
Yes.
gets implanted in the seed, or it's like attached into the semen.
Yes.
And it goes, and it gets passed on to the next generation. And the example that was given was like way back in the caveman days. If they felt that that they needed to run faster because of animals and things like that, if they thought about that, in the last moment, the child would be able to run faster than the parent when he grew up. It's because that thought was implanted in the seed and therefore passed through in genetics.
He heard all of this in the tapes that came through, and if I don't listen to the tapes, I don't remember it.
Okay. So thoughts can be transferred right into genetic coding.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very interesting. That's mind-blowing. So, I mean, we don't have to stop there. We can go into things like depression, maybe, bipolar disorder, paranoia.
Yeah.
I suppose there's a whole bunch that have some connection or root in thought.
Yeah.
But of course, that people who'd be watching this program would probably say that would be very difficult to believe.
They told me one time that many years ago, I'm sure it was a long, long, long time ago, that children way back, they were brought up when they were 4 years old. The little boys were put in a school by the masters over there, and the girls 4 years old were put them in the school by masters over there. So women would teach the girls over here, and the men would teach the boys over there. And puberty was not until they were 32 years old. Can you imagine that?
You're talking about civilizations tens of thousands of years ago.
Yes, this is why there's in the Bible a few places there it says that he was from the house of David or he was from the house of Joseph. That's why there's a few of them in the Bible mentioned they were from these groups. And this is why those people lived such a long time, way, way back. They're not like it is today.
That's amazing. So actually, throughout time, rather than we becoming more evolved, in fact, we've gone the opposite.
Gone the opposite.
But we've convinced ourselves that with technology and the way we measure technology, that we have progressed even further.
That's right.
But that's not the case.
Tina, you said before that the viewers might have a hard time believing the power of thought on genetics and other things. I'd like to give an example of something that happened that I experienced. Reverend Hewitt experienced the same thing, dealing with the power of thought. We both attended a seminar where we did this exercise. And basically we were given like little 3x5 cards. Every person was given 2 cards. And you were to draw a picture of something, some sort of symbol on the card. And once everybody had finished their symbols, there was about 600 people there. You took your 2 cards and you passed them to your person next to you, and took some other cards. And this kept passing over and over and over again. Maybe 30 or 40 times people exchanged cards. Then we were told to stop and not to look at the cards that we had. We were then taken outside into a field, and the field had a large fence around it. It was like a horse fence that was around it. And we were given tape, and we were to tape the cards that we had somewhere along the fence with the picture against the fence. So in other words, all you would see is the white part of the card, face sticking out. Then we were told that what we had to do was to put on a pair of blinders, and I have a sample of them here. So basically you took these off and you put these over your eyes so you couldn't see anything. And then we were told to spin around and to go find our card. To walk in the fence around with 600 other people and to find your card. And the way you need to do this is you need to focus. What you need to start to do is to see that image that you created on that little screen, your frontal lobe, that the same screen where you see your dreams at night, to see that image there and to focus on it. And that thought and that focus of that thought would draw you to your card. Well, for me, I was marching around there for maybe a half hour, 45 minutes. I was getting nowhere. So in other words, you'd walk blindfolded, and when you got to the fence, you were allowed to peek under your blindfold, look at a card and see if it was yours. If it wasn't, you just put it back down, put your blinders on, and continued on to try to find it again. So I was getting quite frustrated, you know, and as I was walking along here, I had the thought, and I said, I hope somebody doesn't come and knock me in the face and knock out a couple of teeth. And don't you know, about 5 minutes later, somebody did knock into my mouth, okay, and so I kept going and going, and you know, you bump into people, so it's a very different kind of experience, and all of a sudden, I had this thought, and I said to myself, you dummy. I said, what are you out here doing this by yourself? I said, you got the Lord God of your being right here. Ask him for help. So I said to myself, Lord God of my being, come forward and help me focus. That's all I said. I didn't ask for it to find my card. I said, help me to focus. And I looked at that image, and I looked at that image, and then about 5 minutes later, lo and behold, I went right to my card.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not.
600 people, blindfolded, walking around in a field.
Yep.
How many cards did they make?
1,200.
So each person made 2 cards.
Each person made 2
They got
cards.
shuffled, face the other way.
That's right.
You had the blindfold on. And this exercise was to
prove to you the thoughts are things, and the power of the mind to tune in on thought energy and to find it.
So you looked within yourself.
I looked within
myself. You didn't
myself.
say, Lord God of my being, and look up to the sky.
No.
As for God.
No.
Or Jesus, or what have you, or Buddha.
That's right.
But you asked for your own.
My own soul. And that was the first time I really knew I made a connection.
And you found your card.
And I found my
card. And how did you know it was your card?
Because my name was on it. You put your name on the card.
Okay.
Your name's on the card and your symbol's on the card. And I looked at it. It was almost like I didn't recognize it. And then I saw my name, and I said, this is it.
How many other people found cards? Do you have any other way of knowing while you were there? Did other people have that experience?
Yes.
You know who found their cards, most of them? The kids.
Yeah, the kids find it just like that.
Oh, there were children there, too.
There were children there,
There
too.
were children there.
See, they don't have all the negative thinking that we're programmed, because we think of this is impossible. You know, we can't do this, so we have a hard time doing it. But the kids don't know that, and they just go do it, and boom, they go right to their cards. Boom, one after the other. Boom, boom, boom.
Isn't it?
I've told him many times, I would love to have about 30 or 40 children of about 5 years old that have not been brainwashed. I'd love that, to start them out properly. They would be the most beautiful, developed, gifted children in the world. They could do remote viewing. They'd be wonderful, gifted children. But if they've been brainwashed with all this garbage, you know, I mean, after all, there's more than 12,000 different religions, these belief systems. You couldn't get anywhere with them. No.
That's why Jesus said, "Suffer the little children unto me." He wanted the children to teach them. I don't know why they used the word "suffer," but they did do that.
So this is an exercise
Yes.
about turning within.
Yes.
Could we call it meditation or a meditative state for
You do
people out there to
you do
connect
kind of
to this?
enter into a meditative state because
Okay.
basically with the blindfold on, you're kind of shutting the world out. So you're kind of going into meditative state even though you're still walking around.
He said to find the kingdom of God go within yourself. He found that when he turned within himself.
Right. So after I found my card, you know, then you try to find your second card. And again, I was having some problems, and I just got tired. So I basically said, you know what? I said, I'm not going to try to find my card anymore. And I just started thinking about things. And no matter what I thought about that, I went right to it on the fence. Even at one time, before I found my card, the symbol I drew was a yellow heart in a purple square. And as I was walking and trying to find this before I asked to focus, I suddenly had the thought, you know what? I said, I remember when I was in kindergarten, I made a Valentine for my mother, and it was a purple heart and a yellow square, the exact opposite. Boom, went to the fence, and there was the opposite.
You found another card?
I found another card, same symbol with the opposite colors. I mean, it was absolutely mind-boggling. Whatever you thought about, that's what was happening.
Oh, my goodness. How long did it take you to find your cards, would you say?
It's hard because you kind of go timeless, because you know, you're just out there in the dark, you know, and you really don't know. I couldn't venture to guess on that.
And other people there were finding their cards as well?
Yes, yes.
I wonder what the probability is.
I'm not sure. I asked the math teacher at my school that I work at to work on it, but she wasn't able to figure it out because it apparently is a very complex type of problem because there's a lot of different variables.
Oh, really?
She said if you just went to the fence and went one time, then it would be easy, but because there's so many multiple times, it's very hard to compute.
Right. Wow.
I have a student that's originally from this city right here, and I've been watching him very carefully for quite a long time here. And he's developing just like a Polaroid picture is developing slowly. He's developing into a healer. And I am very proud of this guy. I am really proud of him. And I'm taking him to a seminar in Brazil in a few weeks. And he's going to be fabulous. He's developing. And he was at first frightened because of what I'm teaching was so far out compared to how he was brought up, and he came back very slowly and sat back in the back of the chapel with his hand, as I always say, hand on the doorknob, so he's going to run out. And now I couldn't get rid of him with a shotgun, and he's fantastic. But I've been watching him very closely because, you see, I saw the light around him in the beginning. And I told him at first, I said, you have the potential, and I wish you would get in the class, and let's see it develop. And it has been developing. And it's that kind of a person that I really am happy with. But there's so many of them that go off on an ego trip before it develops. And that's the kind of person that man chose, you see. And I'm sure that he is proud to see him, that one person develop. That's how he selected. He saw the light around all of those boys. But only 3 of his 12 developed, Peter, James, and John.
So you mentioned before that you have a healing and a teaching ministry.
It's a healing and a teaching ministry, yeah.
And now with the teachings, and of course we're bringing the teachings now to public access television.
Yeah.
You have also had students there who have developed into healers.
Yeah.
And they are actually helping people.
Absolutely.
So people come to your church
Yeah.
asking to be healed. And this person who has developed is doing just that.
Yeah.
No hocus pocus.
No hocus pocus.
No money asked for
No.
to do this. Just
No.
helping for the sake of helping. Where do we hear that
So when
anymore?
I leave this, when I leave this world and I go join the other ascended masters, I'll leave here happy because I've got somebody else to stay here and continue the work.
Good.
That's all I'm looking forward to,
Very good.
because I know that I will go on the other side just like he did. And they can't nail me to the cross, and they can't burn me at the stake. Because, there's a few people that's waking up.
Well, we certainly hope there are. That's the intent of this show, is at least to get people to ask the questions. And I'm going to remind the viewers that we are still live, 889-1728. If you have any questions with respect to meditation, your experiences with thoughts that you thought had transformed into other things with other people, or maybe they didn't, or somebody you know who miraculously came through maybe a bout of cancer, and the doctors really don't know why, and maybe it had nothing to do with some of the medication that was being taken, or anything from what we'll call Western medicine. If you have any questions, comments, anything you'd like to share with us, we'd be happy to listen to you. I am going to ask you, because I know you have talked about this in other shows, isn't there an affirmation that you did in another show a few weeks ago that can actually help people go within and help them to send or transcend positive thoughts?
Yes. Before we talk about that, Tina, I want to go back into the Bible again and into Jesus' teachings, and to go into Matthew chapter 6, verse 6 and 7. And in it, that it says, I'm using the Smith's Goodspeed version that was published in 1939. But when you pray, go into your own room and shut the door, and pray to your Father who is in the unseen, and your Father who sees what is in secret will reward you. The King James says, go into your own closet of prayer. And basically what they're talking about, what Jesus was talking about, was the same thing I was mentioning before. To go into your own closet of prayer is to take something and to cover your eyes with it. Because basically what's happening when you do this is that your frontal lobe, where you see things, is where you need to focus on whatever you need to try to bring into your life, or whether it's an affirmation or whatever. And when your eyes are open, it's projecting the same image on that same frontal lobe, and therefore you can't have your eyes open and concentrate on anything else, because you're getting a double exposure on your frontal lobe. So by going into your closet of prayer, he meant that you put on some blinders, you go within, you see yourself within the auric field, the egg-shaped light that's around your body that comes from your soul. That's the closet that you're in, and then you address your prayers into the middle of your chest where your soul is, because that is the Lord of your being, and that is what Jesus is talking about when he says, go into your closet of prayer, or in this version says, go into your own room. But this is the way you set up that affirmation. You go into a relaxed state. You put on a pair of blinders. You see yourself within the bubble of light that you're talking about. And if we could have the first graphic on, which has the first affirmation, come on the screen. And this is the affirmation that you should say. Lord God of my being, unto the Father within. If you're female, you could say within, unto the Mother within. Come forward this moment, this hour. Bring forth the Christ that is within me. And Christ is an ancient word meaning God-man or God-woman realized. Jesus taught we are all gods, but we're gods in the embryo because we haven't called this energy forth. That God is a soul that's within you. And by bringing this forth and using that energy, is what will make you a Christ. Then it says, release the enzymes from my brain into my bloodstream, that my body or temple be healed. And then at the end of this prayer or affirmation, you're to say, so be it. So be it is just like the return button on the computer key. You know, when you type something in, you need to hit the return button in order to make it happen. That's what happens when the soul hears "so be it." It will carry out that instruction. So this is one of the affirmations that you can use to help you heal your body. And you could say this at night before you go to sleep, and at that point you might not need the blinders because you're in a dark room, your eyes are shut, and you can just, before you go to sleep, say this affirmation, and then feel almost like visualize things happening within your brain, releasing the enzymes into the bloodstream, and you could actually visualize it going around, because all that visualization, all that thought energy helps to project that to happen. It's sending it out into the ether waves, and it can only come back to you.
Now, isn't there something to be said about the idea, this made me think of this right now, of biofeedback, where we are really controlling what's going on in our body with thoughts. Don't we see that with many doctors these days?
Yes.
The patients will go in and do that. And I've also heard, too, that when you go to sleep at night, a good number of the cells of your body, and of course they're in your brain too, regenerate and grow new cells.
Yes.
Of course, I think it's depending on how old you are as well, as far as the speed of that or the number of
Well,
cells.
they say every 7 years you have a whole new set of cells. Your body has has changed.
So it stands to reason that if those thoughts can create chemical reactions or open up synaptic connections in the brain, that perhaps you really can change yourself.
There's one important thing that we have not touched on, and they certainly don't touch on this in the church. No churches touch on it. Gifts of the Spirit Church does, but the other churches don't. They want everybody to think that God is out there in some piece of real estate in the sky, and that you have to come in and pay a certain amount of money in order to talk to God. You know, like the church itself is a great big telephone booth. We have two bodies. We have the physical body we see in the mirror, and then you have the spirit body that Jesus tells us about through the prophet of St. Paul. Now, this is where everybody's been disconnected. If you go into your closet of prayer, which means you put the blinders on, and you separate yourself, and then you say, Lord God of my being, unto the Father within, come forward this moment, this hour. Now it's the physical talking to the God within. Come forward. Then the light around the body expands. Expands. When I see the class do this, their light expands. Comes way out. So now it's like a child that the mother picks the child up or the grandmother picks the child up, because now there's a connection made between the mother or grandmother and the child. But when there's no connection made, then the child is on its own, you see? So this is very, very important when the mother says, or the grandmother says, come forward this moment, this hour. This is very, very important. But the churches don't teach that. They teach you to call forth this that's not out there. You understand?
See, the churches used all sorts of techniques to get people to look without instead of looking within. The main thing they did was they allowed the use of statues.
That's right.
Now, according to Jewish religion, if you read the Ten Commandments, it says you shall have no graven images before you in your prayers, which means you'd have no statues. But that was changed early on in the Catholic Church because they wanted the statues, because they wanted the people to focus on that statue and think that they're talking directly to God when they see the statue. And it was Awan, who's the angel without a name, who we write about, he called that the spiritual training wheels. It was a way for them to get people to focus outside of themselves.
Now, I just wanted to clarify something. You mentioned angel without a name. That is Awan, and that's an entity that Carl had come through his body.
Scared me
while
to
you were in
death the
trance.
first time he came through.
And Sidney had been recording
Yes.
what was discussed at those particular times. And also, as a result of these readings or sessions, the two of you have put together a book, and it's called My First Encounter with an Angel,
Yeah.
Revelations of Ancient Wisdom. And at the end of this show, for those of you who might be interested, quite a bit of what we discuss in this program is in this book. You can call the number at the end of the show and get more copies if you're interested, or if you have questions in general about the book. Okay, so don't be shy about that. Mine's a little dog-eared, as I've taken notes from it and used it as a resource for the show. But if you're interested in a copy for yourself, and in fact, I'm sure Carl and Sidney would be glad to autograph these copies, contact them, and the number is on the screen at the end of the show. Okay, thank you. Now we're talking about icons, people using different statues to pray to I don't know, hope for change to. And I came across something this week, and not having a very strict religious background myself, I'd had some questions about rosary beads. And I don't know if we can get a close-up. I guess these are pretty much the standard type of beads that you would probably see everywhere. I believe that these were worn by a nun. This is what I was told, and these came to me through a very good friend of mine's mother. And I had thought, it would be interesting if we could talk about this in the show. And in fact, it just fits perfectly that these seem to be something that people are encouraged to use to pray with, or as a symbol or an icon. Of course, there's a cross at the end here with Jesus on the cross. And I wanted to know what you thought about these beads.
Is he on the cross?
Yes,
he's on the cross.
And there's a few other little charms here as well.
Oh, guys, on the cross.
And I wanted to know if you had any idea about the history of rosary beads, or really what the significance was that there are beads. I mean, there's quite a few here. I see some are longer, some are shorter. What could you tell me about these?
From what my understanding, and again, I'm not well versed in Catholicism, but the bigger beads, you were to say one specific prayer, and on the smaller beads, you say a different prayer. And I don't exactly know which ones. But to me, the rosary beads directly contradict Jesus' teaching. Because if we go right back to that same chapter I was in, Matthew chapter 6, and this time instead of verse 6, we go to verse 7, the next one, it says, "And when you pray, do not repeat empty phrases as the heathen do, for they imagine that their prayers will be heard if they use enough words." So what Jesus is saying is that if you're saying the same thing over and over and over again, and you think if you say it long enough or hard enough or loud enough that it'll finally rise up and get to God's ear, that's the way you think you're going to pray. That's not the way to do it. And Jesus taught that. He said, go into your own closet of prayer and pray to the God within, not to repeat the same thing over and over and over again. Basically, what you should do is to create your own prayer. The rosary beads is a way to focus, again, and it's focusing, again, not within yourself, but outside of yourself. You're counting these beads. The Islamic people also have beads that they count with, and they also say certain prayers. It's the same concept as the rosary beads, but it was a technique that they used which directly contradicted Jesus, because he didn't want this. See, the thing that I wanted to emphasize about the affirmation is this affirmation can be used for anything. It's just the top part that needs to be the same, because you need to address it to the Lord God of your being. If we could have the second affirmation come on the screen, please. And I'll give you a second example of an affirmation that a person can use if they are kind of stuck. And it would go, Lord God of my being, unto the Father and Mother within, come forward this moment, this hour, and bring forth the Christ from within in me. That's pretty much a standard part of this affirmation, because you need to set that up to get the physical to talk to the spirit body and get the spirit body to come forth. So that has to be the same. But from that point on, you can say something else. In this case, we're going to say, go into the memory bank of my soul, because all memories are stored in the soul, and erase now and forevermore all memories of my victimization, or whatever you need to say there. If you just had a bad love affair and that person is always in your thoughts and you want to get over it, say, erase the image of this person from my soul forever. Replace all the, and it's important that if you're asking something to be erased, that you replace it with something. And you say, replace it, or replace all those memories with the love for all humankind. So be it, and so be it makes it happen. And you can say this like daily. Okay, and eventually your soul will pick up on this, and these memories will be erased.
Thank you. So you've kind of put together a formula, if you will, where you have a beginning and an end, and you kind of fill in the middle.
Right. Exactly.
We do have a caller on the line, so I'm going to take that call now, and we'll see what they'd like to talk about. I don't know if they're there anymore. We might have lost them. Maybe if they would like to try to call back again. Sometimes this phone system is simple, but sometimes I might have accidentally disconnected.
They're on.
But we'll continue, and if you're still interested in calling back, we welcome your calls and comments to 889-1728. So, in fact, Jesus was saying that by repeating words over and over and over and over, it's really not going to make a difference.
No.
Just for the sake of repeating them without
and so many
putting something behind
so
it.
many religions do it. I know in the Jewish religion they pray 3 times a day. They say the exact same prayers in the morning, in the afternoon, and the evening. Then they vary a little bit, but there's a basic core that's the same thing, and it gets to be a very rote thing. You know, some of them pray so fast like that because they know it so well because they've said it 17,000 times. And don't you think that if there was a God sitting out there someplace, they'd get tired of hearing the same thing over and over and over again?
Okay. We have that caller who is brave enough to call back, and let's see if I can press the right button and get you on the line. Please be patient. If you could guide me in the other room, is it the intercom button or the speaker button? Well, we'll give it a shot. Go ahead, caller. Hi. Thank you for calling. If I hung up on you, I apologize.
That's all right.
Go right ahead.
I have a question for you.
Okay, go right ahead. What's your question?
Okay, can you explain to me how can I open up my brain completely?
The question was, how can this gentleman open up his brain completely? And that's for the purpose of what?
To heal myself, to see what you see, Carl.
All right, so he wants to be able to heal himself and to be able to see what you see.
Okay, you're going to have to work at this for quite some time, sir. What you should do is do the affirmation, Lord God of my being, unto the Father within, come forward and help me to open my brain that I have total knowingness, that I have wisdom of the ages. And you should write that down and repeat that a tremendous amount of time. Put your absolute focus on that, because there are so many chambers of the brain that shut down.
Okay.
Okay, did that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Did that help you?
Yes, it does.
We might be able to, depending on the time, although we have a few minutes left, we might be able to show that affirmation again. And for those of you who might want to jot down some of this, or of course, you could always pop a VHS tape into the VCR, and then you could have it at your leisure to watch as often as you want. And here we are. We have this affirmation again. For those of you who want to do that. Now, while that affirmation stays up, if I could ask that to stay up, we're going to take our second call. Thank you for calling.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, we have another caller. Go ahead, caller. Go ahead, caller.
First of all, my name is Gene. I would like to say thank you. I've been flipping through the channels and caught just the tail end of your show here, but I'm looking for more information on your organization or your group. Do you have a website or anything like that where I could get some more information?
We have a website that's under construction. It looks like a train hit it, but it's under construction. We're located at 1595 Route 85 in Chesterfield, It's probably more Oakdale, but Chesterfield is on 85, diagonally across the street from the fire department in Chesterfield.
Yes.
It's easy to find.
Okay. Well, I used to live in Oakdale, so.
Oh, you should find it.
Okay. Well, I just want to say thank you. I grew up in a very militant, fundamental religion, and basically got kicked out of the theological seminary for disagreeing with some of their views, which I'm all of a sudden seeing on television repeated, and I've never heard anybody repeat them before. And it's amazing. I've studied the Bible inside and out, and I came to the realization that this Christ was not talking about outside, but was talking within. And I just want to thank y'all for putting on the show.
God bless you for saying what you did. You made my day. Because of what you just said, I'm going to say something that was just told to me this week. And, sometimes I don't have the nerve to repeat what I have been told. This great brother of mine here, these pictures are behind me. He told me something this week that I've been waiting. And, sometimes I don't have the guts to say it. He said that a lot of this religious stuff that we have to deal with, he said that it was all created in 325 in the month of June, but today in our present time it's all recycled ignorance. Look at that. Did you notice that?
Yes, I noticed that.
It
just
went
moved
boom
in.
over to your arm.
Well, I can't say how much I appreciate it all. I'm hoping maybe get down there and meet you all. I'm right now so excited. I got chills all over my body. It's just, I've been meditating on my own since about 13 years old. I was told by the church not to do that because it was evil, not to go within myself.
Would you believe?
And it's just, I wish I could express how excited I am to see other people that, I've talked to all kinds of religions. I've been over in the Middle East. I've been in South Asia and all kinds of places. I've had the opportunity to talk to Tibetan monks and Shaolin priests actually from China, and it's just amazing that I finally see someone that says, hey, wait a minute, this is what it's saying, and it's like, wow, I'm probably not making a lot of sense, but I do appreciate it. Thank you very much.
We appreciate you.
At the end of the show, there'll be our phone number and address.
Thank you very much, y'all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
I got cold chills over my body from what that man just said.
That's wonderful.
It is.
Okay. Well, that's going to wrap up another show. What a way to wrap up a show.
Yeah.
That's the best news I've heard. Just that one man's voice. That's all I needed.
We've covered thoughts and how powerful thoughts are tonight. We've talked about Carl being influenced by thoughts from the spirit world. We started out with that. We went into the effects that it has on the physical body.
Hang up and try your call again.
Excuse me.
Dial the
Thank you. Sorry about that. I'll get this phone straight eventually in one of these shows. No, I'm not the type that has 12 o'clock showing on their VCR all the time. I am capable of this, I promise you. So again, callers, be patient with me. I'll get this down. And we continued with how thoughts affect our bodies. Due to change these thoughts in our bodies with positive affirmations. And my guests are laughing at me. So I guess they had a good time.
I'm laughing at you because of this picture. Did you notice he just went over there like this, and I said what I did.
Okay. And with that, I thank you again for being my guest, Sidney Schwartz.
Well, thank you,
And
Tina.
Reverend Carl Hewitt. And I thank you, viewers. Tune in next week. It gets hotter and better. Take care.